Hey, this is Mr. Perez. Today, we're going to do a quick review of some exponents. Of course, we got to get started with Charlie. He better be ready to go. Hey, Charlie, we're doing exponents today. Woohoo! Oh, you think this is fun, huh? Well, you better think it's fun. All right, Charlie, right there, exponents. Okay, now recall, from pre-algebra, we defined multiplication as sums, right? And so here, we're going to take 3 times 4, which means we have 4 of these 3's all being added together. That's 3 times 4. And if we do 3 plus 3 plus 3 plus 3, that gives us 12. Okay, that's the way we defined multiplication back in pre-algebra. Now, why did we do that? For this reason. We have 3 raised to the 4th power, right? Now, 3 raised to the 4th power means you still have 4 3's, but they're not being added together. They're being what, Charlie? Multiplied together, right? Okay, and then we can bust out some kung fu. Remember, when everything is being multiplied, we can multiply in any order, so we're kind of grouping things here. 3 times 3 is 9, right? And 3 times 3 is 9. And 9 times 9 is what, Charlie? 81. 81. Very nice there, Charlie. Now, we say this as 3 raised to the 4th power, where the 3 is defined as the base, and the 4 is defined to be the exponent. Okay? All right, now, let's do some problems. Evaluate. That means find the value of. Okay, so find the value of 2 raised to the 3rd power. That has a shortcut name. We say 2 cubed. Okay, 2 to the 3rd means you have 2 times 2 times 2. Notice there's 3 2's all being multiplied. And 2 times 2 is 4, times 2 is 8. Very nice there. Okay, now, let's do another one. Now, be careful with this one. Notice we have a negative 2 in parentheses. Now, if your negative number is a base, we're going to put it in parentheses, right? And so negative 2 to the 4th power means that we're going to have 4 of these negative 2's all being multiplied together. Well, now we're going to use some kung fu here and say, well, negative times a negative is a positive. Negative 2 times negative 2 is 4. Negative 2 times negative 2 is 4. And what's a positive 4 times a positive 4, Charlie? 16. 16. So that answer is a positive 16. Okay, now, let's go to this next problem. Now, I'm writing this as negative 1 times 2 to the 4th because a lot of people mess up this problem only because you don't really interpret the language correctly. Okay? And so we don't generally write negative 1 times 2 to the 4th. We write it this way, negative 1 times 2 to the 4th. This is how it's written. Notice there's no parentheses around that 2. That bottom part right there, a negative sign in front of 2 to the 4th means negative 1 times 2 to the 4th. Okay? So we like to be precise when we write in the language of math. And a lot of you know how to do that. The problem is just that sometimes you're interpreting it incorrectly. And so we like to be precise. It's like, you know, when you're driving to your school and you see this big old sign out there and it says, you know, swim meet today at the pool. Where else is it going to be? Of course it's going to be at the pool. So it's kind of the same thing here when we say negative 1 times 2 to the 4th is written the negative sign in front of 2 to the 4th. So that's what it means. And once you understand that, then it becomes easy because you see it as negative 1 times 2 to the 4th. Notice it's 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. And 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 is the same as 4 times 4 is 16. But there's a negative 1 in front, so it really means negative 1 times 16. So here, the answer is negative 16. So just be careful with that. Okay, let's move on now. Let's do some fractions, evaluate. 3 halves raised to the 3rd power, or 3 halves cubed. Well, 3 halves cubed means 3 halves times 3 halves times 3 halves. There's 3 of them being multiplied together. And when you multiply straight across the top, you get 3 times 3 is 9 times 3 is 27, Charlie. Now, what's 2 times 2 times 2? 8. 8, that's right, it's 27 eighths. So we'll leave it as an improper fraction here. Now, here it is again. This is read as negative 1 times 1/2 squared. Negative 1/2 is not in parentheses, right? The 1/2 is in parentheses, but it's not a negative 1/2 in parentheses. What I'm trying to say is the negative sign is outside of the parentheses. The base is 1/2. The exponent is 2. And you have a negative 1 being multiplied to that quantity here. Now, order of operations says you must do the exponent before you do the multiplication. So that's why you have to put that -1 out front. You got to do it in your mind and realize it's 1/2 times 1/2, which is 1/4, but it's being multiplied to the -1. And right here you see our answer is -1/4, right? So be careful with those. All right, so let's do a couple decimals here. Now, a lot of you read it as 0.3. Well, how is that one properly read? 0.3 is really 3/10, right? And so right here we have 3/10 squared, which means 3/10 times 3/10, or 0.3 times 0.3. And if you had a calculator, you would see that 3/10 times 3/10 is 9/100. If you know how to read decimals, that's what you should have learned in pre-algebra. And so most of you say, oh, 0.3 times 0.3 is 0.09, because you're sitting there with those calculator kids and putting the numbers in your calculator, right? Well, the calculator is a learning tool, so don't get too dependent on the calculators, right? All right, so anyway, so our answer is 0.09, which is 9/100. Well, if you understand what decimals are, for instance, 0.3 is 3/10, it might be a little easier to take this approach. See, 0.3, which is 3/10, we have 3/10 squared, which means 3/10 times 3/10, and when you multiply straight across the top, straight across the bottom, you get 9/100. How do you write 9/100 as a decimal? 9/100, or 0.09, which is 9/100. It's the same thing. So, anyway, that's enough for now. Let's take a break and we'll see you all again soon.